Today we are slightly ahead of the current moment, intentionally, because the solar eclipse in Aquarius on February 17th is not something you meet casually. It is something you prepare your inner space for. Aquarius has already been highly activated since the previous new moon. The atmosphere has been charged, subtle but unmistakable. If you, like me, have significant placements in the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, you may have felt the pressure building, a kind of internal restructuring. Fixed energy does not like to move quickly. It stabilizes, it preserves, it holds form. So, when it begins to crack, when it begins to respond, you know the force at work is not minor. This eclipse is not simply a lunar event. It marks the beginning of one of the most consequential astrological sequences we have entered in recent years. It opens a new arc, both collectively and personally. A solar eclipse is a new moon intensified. It is a moment when the sun and moon meet in the same degree, in the same sign, and the light of conscious direction is temporarily obscured. The sun represents clarity, order, leadership, structure, identity. The moon represents fluctuation, instinct, memory, the unconscious field of feeling. When they merge and the light is dimmed, the storyline bends. I often describe astrology as the meeting point of three currents: fate, fortune, and free will. Fate is the larger architecture. It is the repeating arc, like the sun rising every morning, reaching its peak, and then descending. There is rhythm, there is structure. There are cycles that are not personal, they are structural. Fortune is different. Fortune is lunar. It is emergence from the unseen. It is probability collapsing into one expression. It is the unpredictable factor, the part of reality that rises from depths we cannot fully map. And free will exists in how we respond to both. At an eclipse, fate and fortune converge with unusual intensity. The predictable arc of order meets the unpredictable surge of potential. The established path may continue, or it may shift abruptly. There is also something astronomically astonishing about eclipses. Our moon appears almost exactly the same size as the sun in our sky. The proportions are precise enough that one can fully obscure the other. That is not common in the universe. Symbolically, this speaks of balance and of interruption. The established order can be eclipsed by unknown possibility. Ancient cultures often experienced eclipses as omens. The sun, symbol of authority, hierarchy, divine mandate, would be swallowed by shadow. It was imagined as a dragon devouring the light. Even today, the lunar nodes are called the head and tail of the dragon. But from another perspective, this is not destruction. It is recalibration. If order becomes rigid, if structures become oppressive, if identity becomes fixed beyond growth, then interruption is evolution. And this particular eclipse carries amplified weight. It aligns with the exact conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, a cycle that begins only once every 36 years. Saturn governs structure, boundaries, institutions, systems of control and definition. Neptune dissolves boundaries, erodes certainty, blurs lines, exposes illusion. When these two meet, old forms begin to soften. What once felt solid may feel unstable. What once felt unquestionable may begin to dissolve. If you have been sensing a subtle heaviness over the past years, a mixture of exhaustion and uncertainty, you are not imagining it. Saturn approaching Neptune often creates a sense of diffuse pressure. Structures feel fragile. Meaning feels foggy. The future feels undefined. And yet, this is precisely the environment in which new paradigms are seeded. This eclipse occurs in Aquarius, the sign of collective systems, innovation, decentralization, and higher vision. It forms a tense square to Uranus, the planet of disruption and awakening. Uranus has just stationed direct, intensifying its voice. Pluto is also in Aquarius, echoing historical periods of structural transformation and redistribution of power. The symbolism is consistent. Entrenched systems destabilize. Authority is questioned. Fixed identities are challenged. But here is the subtle layer. While the eclipse highlights systemic shifts, it simultaneously asks a deeply personal question. Where in your own life has order become rigidity? Where has identity become confinement? Where are you holding onto a role that no longer reflects who you are becoming? Eclipses do not always explode externally. Sometimes they operate quietly, rearranging internal architecture before outer events catch up. If you, like me, have been observing patterns that feel outdated but difficult to release, this eclipse may provide the momentum that has been missing. And the way you enter it matters. If we go deeper into the symbolism of this eclipse, we begin to see a very clear pattern forming. This eclipse does not stand alone. It unfolds on the exact conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, a generational shift of structure dissolving into vision. Saturn rules Aquarius traditionally. Saturn governs structure, hierarchy, institutions, responsibility, time. It defines boundaries. It says, this is the limit. Neptune dissolves limits. It blurs, softens, erodes. It exposes illusion. It asks, what if the boundary was never real to begin with? When Saturn and Neptune form an exact conjunction, as they do now, we enter a new 36-year paradigm. This is not light weather. It is generational architecture shifting. In collective terms, this can look like institutions losing clarity, systems being questioned, authority structures destabilizing. In personal terms, it feels like the slow disintegration of identities we built for survival. And then the eclipse activates it. On top of that, Uranus forms a tense square. Uranus does not negotiate gently. It interrupts. It liberates through shock. It replaces the predictable with the unprecedented. Pluto in Aquarius adds another layer. Historically, Pluto in Aquarius correlates with radical redistribution of power, technological leaps, ideological revolutions, shifts from centralized authority toward distributed systems. The message is not subtle. The existing order is not guaranteed permanence. But here is where I want to shift the focus. Because while we can speak about collective systems endlessly, eclipses are always deeply personal. And for me, Aquarius new moons, especially eclipsed ones, have a very specific signature. I have been observing this for years in my own life. Every single year, when the new moon arrives in Aquarius, something inside me reorganizes. It is as if the energetic blueprint for the entire year gets laid down in those days. That is why I always choose to work consciously with this moon, because an eclipse amplifies whatever is seated. This is not about fear. It is about alignment. When the light dims temporarily, when fate and fortune intersect, when structure meets dissolution, we are offered something rare: the ability to intentionally encode a new trajectory. And I want to share something personal here. For me, the Aquarius new moon has become the moment when I create my annual vision framework, not just goals, not resolutions, a deeper, energetic architecture. I have tested this for several years now, and I can say very honestly, when I consciously plant intentions at this lunation, the year unfolds in coherence with what was envisioned. Aquarius governs future timelines. It governs higher perspective. It governs long-range evolution rather than short-term emotion. When you seed something here, you are not reacting to the present. You are aligning with the future. And that is powerful during an eclipse. Because eclipses do not simply initiate cycles. They accelerate them. This is why later I want to share with you my favorite practice that I use every year at this time: a structured vision process, what many call a vision board or desire map, but approached intentionally, astrologically aligned, not randomly. It is not about wishing, it is about encoding. But before we move into practice, it is important to understand the energetic terrain we are working with. Saturn-Neptune dissolves old frameworks. Uranus destabilizes stagnant systems. Pluto transforms power structures. The eclipse interrupts the predictable arc. So ask yourself gently, where has my life become overly defined by obligation? Where am I operating from inherited structure rather than chosen direction? Where am I holding on because it feels safe, even if it no longer feels aligned? And then equally important, what future version of me is quietly forming? What vision feels slightly ahead of my current reality? What would I build if I knew the old constraints were loosening? The North Node sits in Pisces during this eclipse, conjunct Venus. This is important because while structural shifts can feel destabilizing, Venus in Pisces offers an expansion through compassion, creativity, beauty, and connection. Evolution does not have to come through rupture alone. It can come through refinement, through choosing resonance over resistance, through designing the future rather than fighting the present. And that is exactly why this eclipse is not simply disruptive. It is formative. So if this eclipse is a threshold, if fate and possibility are renegotiating structure, the most powerful thing we can do is participate consciously. For me, the Aquarius new moon is not abstract. Every year, and I truly mean every year, this lunation lays down the energetic program of the entire cycle ahead. I began noticing this several years ago. I would look back at December and trace the main storyline of the year. And again, it would lead back to what was seeded during Aquarius season. So I stopped treating it as just another new moon. If you, like me, feel this shift internally, especially if you carry strong fixed energy in your chart, you may sense that something structural is being written right now. And this is why I want to invite you into a practice, not as a ritual for comfort, but as conscious architecture. This is the moment to create your vision map for the year. You can call it a desire board, a vision board, a map of intentions. The name does not matter. The structure does. Prepare slightly in advance. It is worth it. Take a larger sheet of paper. Give yourself space, physically and mentally. Divide the page into areas of life. You may choose 9 sectors or fewer if you prefer clarity over complexity. For example, self and identity, health and body, communication and social circle, family, friends, close contacts, home and environment, creativity, skills and personal development, career and resources, love and relationships, spiritual development, travel, expansion, and rest. Do not rush this part. Then gather visual material that resonates with the reality you are encoding. You can print images, cut out pictures, use photographs, or even create your own symbolic drawings. The point is not aesthetics. The point is alignment. Images speak to the subconscious more directly than abstract language. But the written word is equally powerful. And here is where attention becomes crucial. Do not write, I want. Do not write, I hope. Do not write, maybe. Write in the present tense, as if the structure is already stabilizing. For example, I am working in environments that respect my value. My body feels strong, balanced, and supported. My relationships are built on mutual clarity and emotional honesty. My income flows steadily and ethically, not fantasy, not exaggeration, alignment. Words carry frequency. The state in which you write them carries even more. Do not write from anxiety. Do not write from lack. Pause until your body softens. Because this practice is not about forcing outcomes, it is about living, even briefly, inside the version of the year that feels coherent with your evolution. When you write, imagine that you are stepping into that year already fulfilled. Not perfectly, but structurally aligned. This is also an extraordinary tool for self-knowledge. As you divide the page, you may notice discomfort, resistance, certain areas that feel empty or unclear. That is information. Aquarius energy is future-oriented. It asks, what trajectory are you choosing? And once your map is complete, do not obsess over it. In the beginning, it can stay somewhere visible, on your desk, on a wall, in a journal, so that your subconscious gently integrates what you have encoded. Let it be present for a while, especially in the first weeks after the eclipse, when the energetic imprint is still settling. But later, you can remove it. You can fold it, place it in a drawer. Sometimes distance allows integration. And throughout the year, you may return to it intentionally. Not to judge whether everything has manifested perfectly, but to observe the trajectory, to notice what has already aligned, to feel where adjustments are needed, to reconnect with the version of yourself who wrote those words. This is not a rigid contract. It is a living document of alignment, and revisiting it from time to time, especially around major lunar moments, can remind you of the direction you consciously chose. Because the purpose of this practice is not control. It is continuity. You are not begging the universe. You are collaborating with timing. And because this eclipse forms part of a larger structural shift, Saturn dissolving into Neptune, Uranus destabilizing rigidity, Pluto transforming collective systems, it is especially important that your internal structure is not reactive. Design, don't react. Align, don't force. And in the next part of this video, I will also walk through how this eclipse may activate each sign differently. Because while the collective architecture shifts together, the area of life it restructures depends on your personal chart. I recommend listening first for your rising sign, because that reflects where this eclipse activates your personal chart most precisely. You can also listen for your sun sign and notice what resonates. For Aries, this eclipse activates your 11th house, the sphere of long-term vision, future planning, alliances, community, and the networks through which your larger goals become tangible. This is not a superficial shift in friendships. It is a restructuring of the ecosystem you belong to. You may begin to sense that certain groups, professional circles, or collaborative spaces no longer reflect the direction you are evolving toward. Some alliances may dissolve quietly, others may intensify in unexpected ways. The deeper question here is not who is staying or leaving, but rather, what future are you architecting and who is structurally aligned with it? If you, like many Aries placements, are used to moving independently, this eclipse may challenge you to reconsider how collective intelligence supports your growth. It is not about surrendering autonomy. It is about choosing the right field of resonance. The seeds you plant now will influence your social and professional trajectory for the entire year. For Taurus, this eclipse falls in your 10th house of career, public image, reputation, and visible authority. This is a significant structural recalibration of how you are perceived and how you perceive yourself in positions of responsibility. You may feel tension between stability and evolution, especially if you have been maintaining a professional identity that no longer feels fully alive. Aquarius energy here asks you to modernize your path, to innovate within structures that may have become rigid. Saturn-Neptune themes may dissolve old ambitions or reveal illusions about what success truly means. This is not necessarily about abrupt change. It is about strategic redefinition. Ask yourself, does my current trajectory reflect who I am becoming or who I once needed to be? For Gemini, the eclipse activates your 9th house. Beliefs, worldview, higher education, long-distance travel, philosophy, publishing, and spiritual frameworks. This is a restructuring of your mental architecture. You may encounter information that shifts your perspective dramatically, or You may feel an internal call to expand beyond familiar narratives. Long-held beliefs may dissolve under Saturn-Neptune pressure, making space for a more refined understanding of truth. If you have been operating from inherited ideologies, this eclipse invites you to consciously choose your intellectual and spiritual direction. The future you design depends on the worldview you adopt now. For Cancer, this eclipse activates your 8th house, shared resources, intimacy, psychological transformation, debts, inheritances, and power dynamics. This is a deep house. It rarely operates on the surface. Financial entanglements, emotional bonds, or unspoken agreements may come into focus. You may begin to renegotiate how you merge your energy with others, materially and emotionally. Saturn-Neptune themes here can dissolve illusions around dependency, revealing where power has been imbalanced. This eclipse asks, where are you surrendering authority unconsciously, and where can you reclaim sovereignty? Transformation here is subtle but profound. For Leo, the eclipse activates your 7th house of partnerships: romantic, professional, contractual. This is not about random relational drama. It is about structural alignment. If you have been navigating imbalances of power or unclear boundaries, this eclipse can bring clarity. Some relationships may deepen because they are aligned with your future. Others may reveal misalignment. Authority themes may surface within partnership dynamics, especially around equality, recognition, and autonomy. The deeper invitation is to redefine what partnership means to you in this new chapter. For Virgo, the eclipse activates your 6th house, daily work, routines, health, habits, and the systems that sustain your body and productivity. This is a restructuring of how you organize your time and energy. If your daily architecture has been built on pressure rather than sustainability, Saturn-Neptune may expose its fragility. You may feel compelled to redesign your workflow, prioritize health differently, or establish clearer boundaries around service. Small adjustments now ripple outward across the year. Your future is built from daily structure. For Libra, this solar eclipse activates your 5th house, the house of creative expression, romance, pleasure, children, risk, and the courage to be visible as yourself. This is not a small activation. It is a structural redefinition of joy. The 5th house is where we create not because we must, but because we are alive. And if you have been operating from obligation, diplomacy, or over-adjustment to others, this eclipse may feel like an internal interruption. Aquarius energy here asks, are you expressing your authentic frequency or performing a version of yourself that feels socially acceptable? Romantic patterns may shift. Creative projects may suddenly take on long-term significance. A new passion may emerge that feels unusual, unexpected, but undeniably aligned. Saturn to Neptune dissolves illusions around what you thought love or validation needed to look like. Uranus introduces a surprising desire for freedom within self-expression. You are being asked to create from originality, not approval. And the way you allow yourself to experience pleasure this year will directly influence your vitality. For Scorpio, this eclipse activates your 4th house, the most private part of your chart: home, family, emotional foundations, ancestry, psychological roots. This is not public transformation. This is internal reconstruction. The 4th house governs the base of your life, the emotional soil from which everything else grows. If that soil has been shaped by inherited expectations, unspoken family dynamics, or patterns of survival, Saturn-Neptune may gently dissolve the structure. You may feel called to redefine what home means, physically or emotionally. Living situations may shift. Family roles may recalibrate. Old memories may surface not to destabilize you, but to release you. Aquarius energy here wants emotional independence, but not isolation. It wants conscious foundations rather than unconscious repetition. This eclipse may mark the beginning of a new chapter in how you define safety. And when your base restructures, everything above it shifts more naturally. For Sagittarius, this eclipse activates your third house: communication, learning, contracts, daily interactions, siblings, local movement, and mental patterns. This is a recalibration of perception. The third house governs how you interpret reality moment to moment. If your inner dialogue has been structured around outdated narratives, Saturn-Neptune may dissolve those mental boundaries. You may notice changes in how you speak, what you choose to share publicly, or the information you consume. Aquarius energy encourages innovative thinking, not just big ideas, which you naturally have, but structured new frameworks for how those ideas are communicated. Be mindful of language during this period. What you say, especially about yourself, becomes structural, and small shifts in daily thought patterns now will echo throughout the year. For Capricorn, this eclipse activates your second house: finances, material stability, resources, values, and self-worth. Because Saturn is your ruling planet, and because Saturn is deeply involved in this eclipse cycle, you may feel this activation quite directly. The second house is not just about money. It is about value, what you believe you are worth, and what structures you build to support that belief. Income models may restructure. Financial responsibilities may shift. But even more importantly, your internal metric of worth may evolve. If you have tied your identity too tightly to productivity or achievement, Neptune's influence may soften that attachment. Aquarius energy here wants innovation in how you sustain yourself. Not reckless change, but conscious restructuring. This year asks you to detach self-worth from outdated definitions of success and build a more future-oriented stability. For Aquarius, this eclipse occurs in your first house: your sign, your body, your identity, your visible presence, your personal direction. This is not subtle. When an eclipse occurs in your sign, it is a direct recalibration of self. The first house governs how you enter life, how you initiate, how others perceive you, how you define I am. And with Saturn-Neptune dissolving and restructuring collective frameworks, Uranus squaring from Taurus, and Pluto newly in Aquarius, you are at the epicenter of transformation. This is your sign, your archetype. Aquarius governs collective systems, technological evolution, future architecture, and decentralization of power. And now, that evolutionary pressure runs through your identity. You may feel layers of self-definition shedding. Roles that once felt essential may no longer resonate. The way you present yourself may shift, subtly or dramatically. This is not about reinventing yourself impulsively. It is about aligning with the version of you that already belongs to the future. Because this eclipse is asking, who are you when you are no longer defined by outdated expectations? Authority moves inward. You are not rejecting structure. You are redefining it from within. And the choices you make about your identity during this period will ripple across the entire year. For Pisces, this eclipse activates your 12th house: endings, subconscious patterns, spiritual integration, retreat, hidden processes. This is quiet work. The 12th house rarely announces itself loudly. It operates in dreams, intuition, subtle shifts in emotional landscape. You may feel the need to withdraw slightly, to rest more, to process what has been dissolving internally over the past years. Saturn-Neptune themes are especially significant for you, as Neptune is your modern ruler. Structures in your life that were built on illusion or self-sacrifice may begin to soften. Aquarius energy here asks for conscious detachment from unconscious patterns. This is not about isolation, it is about completion. Release what no longer belongs in your field before the next personal cycle begins. because after dissolution comes renewal. Prepare your vision with clarity. Write carefully. Choose language that reflects who you are becoming, not who you are afraid of losing. And then trust the process. The light does not disappear during an eclipse. It recalibrates, and so do we. Take the next few days gently. Observe what begins. Notice the subtle shifts, because the storyline of your year is already forming, and you are not separate from it. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video, and we will continue walking this cycle together.